Good morning, everyone. And
oh yeah, we are good. Sorry, I just wanted to make sure the YouTube was on, but we are. Sorry. Proceed. Thank you.
okay. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Committee of Adjustment meeting for Friday, October 16th. My name is Tom Hill, and I will be chairing the meeting today. This morning, we have a public meeting scheduled for one consent application and one minor variance application. I should probably wait until we have the applicant in the room before we go through the procedures for today. But I will just mention that the two applications, the first is a consent application B20-08 for 1582 Lost Channel Shore, and A20-16 for 7148 Go Home Lake Shore. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest?
No.
Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. Could I have a motion to adopt the agenda for today's meeting?
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay, and seconded. Thank you. Did you get those names, Sydney?
Can you just repeat one more
Moved
time?
in second. Yes, I would call for a motion to adopt the agenda for today. It was moved by Bill Demkew and seconded by Colin Caddo.
No, it was moved by Mike Ferguson.
Steve Jarvis, I think.
It's seconded by David Matthews.
It sounds like everybody's in favor.
We're all in
Okay,
favor.
all in
anyways.
favor, please indicate. Thank you. The motion is passed. I would ask the Secretary Treasurer to provide us with notice of the publication.
Notice of each of the applications was sent by first-class mail to the respective owners and assessed persons within 120 meters, 500 meters, or 800 meters, and to those persons and agencies likely to have an interest in the application. The notices were sent at least 20 days prior to this morning's meeting. Included in each notice was an explanation of the purpose and effect of the application and a key map showing the location of the property. Other relevant information may have also been provided. These circulations were provided in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act 1990.
Okay, thank you very much. Could we call our first applicant, please?
Yes, Mr. Chair, he is here now in the room, and after planning staff provide their presentation, if you'd like to call on him to make additional comments, that would be great.
Thank you. And could you identify yourself, please? The applicant. Oh, he's muted. I'm sorry. Can we get him unmuted?
There he is.
Can you hear me now?
Okay. Good morning.
Thank you.
Can you hear me, sir?
My name is Thomas Dean. Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, we're having a bit of difficulty
Hello.
hearing you.
Uh-oh, okay.
Can you
Good
give us
morning.
your
Can you
name
hear me
again,
now?
sir?
Thomas
Yes.
Dean.
Very good. Mr. Dean, just to give you an overview of the proceeding today. First, I will summarize the procedure that we're using for the meeting. First of all, the Secretary Treasurer will advise the committee as to when and how the hearings are being conducted, which she has done already. And then each of the applications are considered separately, so you'll be appearing on your own. First of all, the planning staff will advise the purpose and effect of the application and provide any information that is relevant. The Secretary Treasurer will summarize any correspondence we have received in regard to your application. There will be an opportunity for any member of the public to respond or have comment on the application as well. After the public input, we will bring the application before the committee. We'll end the public forum, and the committee will deliberate on the proposed application and consider a motion to either pass, defeat, or to defer the decision of the application. Do you understand?
Understood. Thank you.
Okay. Then I would ask the planning department to provide us with an overview of the application.
Thank you, Chair. Just going to share my screen here. Okay. So our first application today is application B2008, submitted by Thomas Dean on behalf of estate of May Cowley Dean. So the property is located at 1582 Lost Channel Shore on Severn River. The application proposes a lot boundary adjustment to facilitate the transfer of a vacant portion of the subject lands, which is 1582 Lost Channel Shore, to the adjoining benefiting lands. The application would not result in the creation of a new lot. So here we have the location map of the subject lands. And as you can see, the lands are located at the southeast of the township boundary along Lost Channel on the Trent Severn Waterway. And again, both the retained and benefiting lands are vacant of structures at this time. And here we have an aerial image, again, just some further detail of the subject lands. As you can see here, the lands are outlined in red, with the benefiting lands adjoining outlined in blue. And here we have the draft survey that was submitted with some additional detail. So the application proposes to sever a vacant portion of land, approximately 0.24 hectares in area, which is this area here that you can see in hatching, which would be then added to the lands here outlined in blue. The purpose of this boundary adjustment is to provide a more functional future building and septic envelope for the benefiting lands. So planning staff did a thorough review of the application, and we are of the opinion that the subject application conforms to and does not conflict with any of the applicable planning policy documents, including the provincial policy statement, the district official plan, township official plan, and zoning bylaw. We did receive comments through the application. Hydro 1 had no concerns, just general comments. The District of Muskoka did provide comments with no objection to the approval, subject to appropriate development controls and recommendations in consultation with the MECP prior to any development. And this is something that was addressed through a proposed condition of the application to require site plan control to be placed on both properties prior to any future development, which again is, as you know, quite standard procedure for these types of applications. So of course, the Development Services Report 2020-68 outlined our opinion, and planning staff do recommend approval of the application subject to the recommended conditions. And I will just provide a brief overview of what the recommended conditions are for the application for committee's benefit, given our new platform here. So essentially, the applicant would be required to provide deeds of the transfer to the township, a complete set of digital drawings, that their municipal taxes are paid up to date, that the severed lands are properly merged with the benefiting lands. This is something that the applicant's lawyer does confirm to us, that the owner confirm the ownership of the shore road allowance of the benefiting lands and complete the purchase of the township if it is not yet owned, that Section 53 of the Planning Act is applied, which again is a very standard condition in this regard. And also, again, speaking to those District of Muskoka comments, that site plan control agreements are received and issued for both of the properties. So again, just a general overview. This is the current subject lands. They are requesting to add this portion here to the benefiting lands outlined in blue. So at this time, I'll stop sharing my screen so the chair can see everybody else. And if you have any questions for myself or again, the applicant, we'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Victoria. Madam Secretary, has there been any correspondence on this application?
One letter was received from Hydro 1 stating they have no comments or concerns regarding this application, and one letter was received from the District of Muskoka regarding future building location and species at risk.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Dean, is there anything that you wish to add to the comments from the planner?
No, I don't think so. I think Victoria has captured everything beautifully. As she mentioned accurately, the intent is just to create a usable and environmentally appropriate piece of land, the benefiting piece of property, which is in my name. The adjacent property is in my mother's estate.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. I don't see any input here from the public. Victoria, can you confirm that we have no other questions for the committee from the public?
Thomas Dean was the only one registered for this application.
Okay. We have been receiving information via chat, and I don't see anything there relative to this application. So I will assume for that we have no other public input. And with that, I will close the public section of the meeting and bring the application before the committee for questions or comments. And we will begin with Member Demke.
I really have no issues with what I see in this application and the presentation, so I'm okay.
Thank you. Member Caddo.
Yeah, just the letter from the district. Is it kind of like a study they have to do for the deer and all that before it is approved? Like we approve it, but then does it have to be approved by the environment, let's say, for the studies and that? That's towards Victoria.
So through you, Chair, that's a great question to Member Caddo. So essentially, and I have spoken to the district multiple times about this application since they've provided their comments, and they confirmed that essentially just through the site plan agreement, us as the township would be able to make sure that where the proposed locations of any future structures or septic systems are in respect of the district mapping and the locations of those sensitive areas. And they determined and they agree that, you know, the applicant should have no problems doing that, but it just gives us the ability to ensure that potentially some additional setbacks are located there, but the district does not have to approve that or anything. That is purely in the township's control. It just makes sure that we get some extra oversight when it comes to potentially a new owner submitting building permits.
So I know up there's a lot of deer in the winter time, so it's but yeah, I don't have a problem with this.
Thank you. Member Jarvis.
Thank you. I have no issues with this as well. I do have a technical question though for Victoria. She's very kindly been answering questions for me via email, which is great. But I note that Victoria noted to me that there is obviously there's shore road allowance that has not been purchased for the benefiting properties. I think I've got that right. Correct, Victoria?
So through you, Mr. Chair, to Member Jarvis, at this time, our records show that it is not purchased, but through the condition, we are allowing the owner to either prove that it already has been, because again, sometimes back in the 70s, these purchases had actually happened, but they just need legal confirmation of that. And if they are not in fact owned, that they will have to purchase them.
Okay, and I know that it's not a requirement with regards to this request anyway, but so the last question I have again is technical. What qualifies, if the short road allowance isn't owned, what qualifies as frontage?
So through you, Mr. Chair, it's one of those things where regardless if the shore road is owned or not, we still look at and consider the frontage the same way. The calculations of the zoning bylaw when it comes to lot coverage, frontage, all those things, still essentially consider that it goes right to the water. So whether they own it or not, the measurements and the calculations are the same. It's just they can't put structures in that area if they don't own it.
Okay, but the property size does not currently include the SR, right?
Yes,
It does.
It does.
Yes. For the purposes of the zoning bylaw, yes. So it would be increasing to the 0.88 hectares.
So would it then be are we requiring that they purchase? Oh, sorry. If the shore road allowance is not currently owned, are we going to require that they purchase it? Require as opposed to ask.
It is a condition of approval. Yes, we are
I
requesting.
think you did state that now that I think about it. Okay, thank you very much. That's the only questions I have.
Welcome.
Thank you. Member Kuchar.
Given all the conditions that have been put on this, I have no issues with this application.
Thank you. Member Ferguson.
Just one quick question. The report clearly states that the retained lands would exceed minimum lot size requirements. Is that also the case for the benefiting lands?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Member Ferguson, that is correct. So the current condition, even if this application were not approved, both benefiting and retained lands already meet the lot area and frontage requirements of the zoning bylaw. This is, again, just, it is a funky little lot, the benefiting lands, where there's water all along the property. So it just provides for some difficult envelopes to be created. So this is just giving them some flexibility and some room to make sure that they can build as far away as possible from the water.
Thank you, Victoria. I think that we've covered all the bases here, and I'm certainly in favor of this application.
Thank you. Member Matthews.
Thank you, Mr. Hill. Mr. Ferguson took the wind out of my sail. That was my question about lot coverage and lot size. I do have one, I guess, sort of to Mr. Jarvis's comment, technical question. In one of the conditions, Victoria, it says Section 50 of the Planning Act. Can you give us a Coles Notes of what Section 50 of the Planning Act is?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Member Matthews. That's a great question. So that Section 53 of the Planning Act essentially just requires that in the future, that slice that's essentially being moved from the subject lands to the benefiting lands has to be sold with the benefiting lands. It can at no point in the future, it can't be, leased separately as a different use. It's just making sure that it stays combined with any future purchases or leases, things like that. So just to make sure that everything stays together.
Would it not naturally merge on title, Victoria?
So that's a great question. So it can, in a lot of ways. Adding this as a condition to future transactions is just a way to ensure that there is no kind of workaround, because sometimes depending on if there's a lot, if it was on a previous plan of subdivision, or if there was a previous old application for consent or things like that that we're not aware of, there are potentially times where lots can actually be potentially sold as pieces. So this way, this is our control, making sure it's all one.
That's great. Sort of belt and suspenders, right? I have no issue with this application, and thank you for that clarity.
Okay, thank you, Member Matthews. Just a quick question here regarding the timing of the site plan agreement. Victoria, you had mentioned and added a lot of conditions to this site plan agreement, and is it correct to understand that the next step is to get all the terms and conditions of the site plan agreement in place before anything else happens? I guess all of those conditions have to be agreed on and the site plan agreement signed before any other transfer or anything takes place. Is that correct?
So to you, Chair, that's a great question. So in this special case, given that there's no actual development proposed at this time, so staff have not received, building permit applications, things like that. What we are requesting the owner to do is to essentially submit for general site plan control on both lots. So that will essentially put a general agreement in place that will include a clause that any future owners, before any new development is permitted, i.e. the issuance of a building permit, they then have to provide an updated sketch of where exactly everything is going that we can then approve. And then essentially the new owner will come in and amend the existing site plan agreement to make sure they meet the conditions of the District of Muskoka. Hopefully that helps clarify, but this is just our way to get site plan on the properties, and then it'll be the onus of the new owner or whoever decides to build to make sure that they meet the requirements as listed by the district.
Okay, I'm just going to try and find here the next part of this, which is right here. And if there are no further questions from the committee, I will read the resolution. Be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Committee of Adjustment approves the consent application B20-08 to zoning bylaw number 2014-75 to permit a lot boundary adjustment regarding lands located at 1582 Lost Channel Shore and 1638 Lost Channel Shore, subject to the following. The deeds for the transfer are submitted to the Secretary Treasurer along with a registered copy of the survey plan. That a complete set of digital drawings files for the reference plan shall be provided to the Township of Georgian Bay. That municipal taxes be paid in full up to the date of request of all issuance of the consent certificate. That the severed lands shall merge with the lands known municipally as 1638 Lost Channel Shore. The owner's solicitor shall take all necessary steps to ensure that the parcels merge under the Planning Act. This may include a deeming bylaw, in which case must be completed prior to the consent certificate being requested. That the owner confirm the ownership of the shore road allowance of the benefiting lands, 1638 Lost Channel Shore, and complete the purchase from the town if it is not yet owned. That section 50 subsection 3 of the Planning Act is applied to all future transactions involving the subject lands. And that site plan control agreements for both the retained and benefit lands be executed to ensure future development control, including recommendations received from the District of Muskoka, as mentioned in comments dated October 9, 2020. All those in favor? Okay, the application is approved unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Dean, and congratulations on the approval.
Thank you very much for your time and consideration. I'll sign off now, I guess, yes?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, it looks like the applicant has left. Is that something that Karen can do as well? Can she remove somebody from the meeting?
Mr. Chair, I have the ability as well, so I removed him as an attendee. So I've been controlling that for you.
Okay, good to know that. So we're ready for our next applicant. And just before you do that, Victoria, I'm just wondering if everybody has had the opportunity to look at the comments that came in the chat section of this Zoom meeting. Comments from Robert Wengus. Have you seen it,
Yeah,
Bill?
I can see them here. Yeah, I see them.
Steve? Dave? You see them,
I
Dave?
read them, yes.
Okay, Mike?
Sorry, Mr.
Done.
Chair. Yes, I see it.
I've
Okay,
read them.
and Member Kuchar? Okay. Okay, with that, then we'll bring our next applicant to the meeting. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning. Mr. Dupuy, could you identify yourself, please, for the committee?
Michael Dupuy from Dupuy and Willett and representing the homeowners.
And could you identify yourselves, please? You'll need to, oh, there we go. Okay, you're good to go.
Yes, Mr. Chair, it's Chris and Yolanda Mahoney.
Thank you very much. Well, good morning and welcome to the Zoom meeting. We're all a little new at this, but I will go through the process for you. what will happen this morning is that, first of all, the planning department will provide us with a complete overview of the application, listing any benefits or concerns we may be dealing with. Following that, the applicant yourselves will have an opportunity to add any future or additional comments that you might find necessary. Following that, there'll be an opportunity from anyone from the public to offer their comments during the meeting. Once the public part of the forum is over, we'll bring the application before the committee, who will deliberate on the proposed application and consider a motion to either pass, defeat, or defer the application. Do you understand that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. First, I would ask the planner to give us an overview. So to the planner, please.
Morning, committee, and to the applicants. I'm just going to share the present. Oh, gonna try and. Oh, Victoria, could you bring up the presentation? It actually won't let me, even though the option's there. Thanks. All right, so this is the statutory public meeting for minor variance application A 2016. The applicants are Chris and Yolanda Mahoney. The agent on the file is Dupuy and Ouellette. And the lands are located at 7148 Go Home Lake Shore on Go Home Lake. An overview of the application: the applicant has requested minor variances to facilitate the construction of an addition onto the existing legal non-complying shoreline dwelling. The first variance is for a increased gross floor area expansion, and the second variance is requesting a increased building height. So on the next slide, we have a breakdown of the two variance requests. So the increased gross floor area expansion, I just want to kind of touch on this a little bit. There is two different provisions in the zoning bylaw that regulate expansions to shoreline dwellings. The first provision is what we had included on the notice, and as you can see on the screen here, where a 25% expansion is permitted because the dwelling is located closer than 10 meters to the shoreline, whereas the applicants are requesting a 73% increase. So the second provision that the zoning bylaw establishes is that it does allow non-complying dwellings, regardless of what the percent increase would be permitted. The second provision allows these dwellings to expand to a maximum of 95 square meters or 1,022 square feet of total gross floor area. So with respect to the second provision that I mentioned there, the variance represents an increase of 2.4 square meters or 26 square feet from the permitted increase to 95 square meter provision, compared to what was advertised being an increase of 48% over what would be permitted by 25%. The second variance, you can see there just some details on it. The zoning bylaw permits an increase to the building height of 1 meter to a maximum of 6. The applicants are proposing to increase the building height by 3.15 meters. So the next slide is the location map showing the location of the subject property, which is located in the central area of Go Home Lake on Crystal Bay. On the next slide is the 2018 aerial imagery. Kind of to the bottom front of the property, we can see the existing dwelling and docking facility with the sleeping cabin, existing legal non-complying sleeping cabin up in the top portion there. The next slide, we have the site plan that was provided by the applicants. Staff have just added on here to clarify the location of the existing non-complying dwelling with the proposed addition shown in the hatching. So on the next slide, we also included some elevation drawings. You can see the existing dwelling in the front elevation shown there, with the proposed addition kind of behind and going above the existing dwelling. So the applicants have advised that due to a significant incline in the terrain immediately behind the existing dwelling, in order to facilitate the proposed addition without the height increase variance, significant blasting and site alteration would be required to essentially lower the grade there to allow the addition to proceed in that location without the height variance. So the next slide just kind of goes into some of the site photos that staff did during our site inspection. So we've shown in here with the red rectangle kind of the approximate location of where the proposed addition would be onto that existing dwelling. The next two pictures go over some of the neighboring developments in the area, which include just shoreline residential and crown land. The next slide shows the rapid incline in the terrain immediately behind the existing dwelling as it is today. And the last picture here shows the view from the subject property looking across Crystal Bay. So as detailed in the staff report, planning staff were originally requesting deferral of the application to allow the applicants to submit more information regarding the septic system and the deck structure near the existing sleeping cabin. Upon further discussions with the applicant's agents, planning staff were advised that the deck at the sleeping cabin has been in existence for some time. And based on those details that were provided to staff following the release of the staff report, we are now comfortable recommending that approval of the application to the committee, subject to the recommended conditions. We feel we've added two conditions in the proposed motion before committee, one being that they provide details relating to the capacity of the existing septic system to accommodate the proposed addition. And the other condition there, number D, is the requirement to give details regarding that existing deck structure to confirm its compliance with the zoning bylaw. Other than that, it's the standard conditions of taxes to be paid. It's limited and fixed to the subject site plan extent and location. We are requesting that the applicants enter into a site plan control agreement and the 3-year expiry. So I would be happy to answer any questions that the committee may have. And I also believe, as the committee is aware, the agent and the applicants are also in attendance today as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Brad. I would ask the Secretary Treasurer if we have received any correspondence regarding this application.
No correspondence was received regarding this application.
Okay, thank you. I would ask the applicant then or agent, do you have anything you would like to add to the comments of the planner? Okay, go ahead, Mike.
Okay, thank you. Just to speak to it, we tried real hard to do this without having to get a minor variance of any kind. But because of the very steep incline on the back of the cottage, we actually had the local contractor go and give us some quick and dirty topo shots on there to see where it is. So in the elevation drawings that were shown, that grade shown in there is pretty darn close to what's going on in real life. There is no opportunity whatsoever to put anything behind the cottage, the existing cottage. And to go, if you're on the water looking at the cottage, to go to the right, you're very close to a property line. So that's really out of the question. And to go to your left, you would be consuming all of the good social space for the existing cottage, because there's a deck and a bit of a flatter area in the rock right there. So it was, we were trying to conserve that as well as increase the bedrooms, increase the size of the building. With the proposed design, the bedroom count is going to be exactly the same when we're done as when we started. The bathroom, I believe we still have the same number of bathrooms. So the net increase is living area. So in terms of impact on the septic system, that's about as light as it's going to get if we're going to do an addition of any kind, because we're not really affecting the two big ones, which are our bedrooms and bathrooms. The size of the cottage is not significant enough to be a concern when you're doing the square footage in the septic calculation. I think this is about as good a solution as we're going to get to try and keep as many people in different scenarios and rules happy along the way. So, and I think that's it for my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Dupuis. Mr. Mahone, is there anything else that you'd like to add?
No, not at this time, Mr. Chair. I think Mike Dupuis has framed it well. Again, we're just trying to play within this existing framework and have as little impact as possible, all the while trying to increase some living space for us in a relatively tight cabin. We obviously love Go Home Lake and want to reside there for many years to come. So that's about it. I won't take too much of the committee's time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. This is the part of the application review where we would welcome comments from the public. And I see we've had some written public comments online. I would ask if the person who is on the chat would like to speak to this application, please go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Would you identify yourself, please?
I'm Robert Wenches. I actually own a cottage on Go Home Lake at the Hondaderos. And okay. I do have yeah, sorry.
Go ahead.
I do have a couple of concerns in regards to this. I came to Go Home Lake 20 years ago. I cottaged my whole entire time on the north end of Lake Joe. And I've sort of seen this a little bit. We have these sort of setback requirements. So we actually have sort of the preservation of the shoreline and for wildlife and a number of different reasons. The current cottage that's sitting on, literally on the shoreline. And my concern is that it is a very, very tight, narrow lot, but it's also a very tight, narrow bay. And so my concern is that we're building right on the shoreline. And they do have an existing cabin that is up top that is on a flat piece of land. And if they need to expand, they can expand there. It would require stairs like every other part of Go Home Lake. There's steep pitches in many different areas. So that's generally my concern in regards to that. If we have the council has sort of had these sort of setback requirements for a specific reason, and that's to preserve the shoreline. So that is my concern, that I have sort of seen this sort of rapid development on Go Home Lake over a period of time. If we are allowing everybody to build right on the shoreline, that we will have a concern in regards to that. So I know that the pictures actually currently show a very steep incline right behind where the existing cabin is, but the other cabin is on a very, very flat piece of land and that have stairs to it. That's where my concern is. That would require and keep the existing setback requirements that they're asking for. It would fall within the parameters of that. So I'm just sort of, it's great that we can actually all build a cottage right on the shoreline, but it is a challenging lot to build on. I have to agree with that, but I just don't understand why that would be allowed in regards to everything. So that's really where my concern is. And that's the only concern I have in regards to it.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Wenches, for your input there. And I see there are no other members of the public that are in the waiting room to comment on this. So I will close the public section of the application review and bring the application before the committee for any questions or comments. And we will begin with Member Matthews.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I guess a question to Brad. you mentioned about the gross floor area. They were permitted an expansion of 25%. They're proposing a 73% increase. But you also mentioned something about the amount of square footage, and I didn't, unfortunately, get those numbers. I wondered if you could provide those for me.
Yeah, so through the chair, that's a great question, Member Matthews. So the zoning bylaw has essentially the two different provisions, the 25% expansion provision, as well as a different provision that would allow them to increase to a maximum of 95 square meters as of right, which is approximately 1,022 square feet. So this variance represents an increase of 2.4 square meters or 26 square feet compared to what is permitted by the 95 square meter provision. Planning staff did advertise the notice to the 25% just because that was the more restrictive policy.
So just to be sure, they're proposing a 97.2 square meter addition.
I'm just opening the report here for the details. So the total gross floor area of the proposed dwelling would be the 97.4 square meters, but the existing is approximately 600 square feet, which, let me see here. Sorry. So the existing dwelling is approximately 56 square meters in size, and they would be proposing to increase that to 97.4 square meters.
Okay, all right. But they would be allowed to increase it to 95 square meters. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so I guess, depends on, it's almost like accounting, right? The numbers can tell you all sorts of different things. 25% permitted to a proposed of 73% gross floor area increase seems less than minor to me. And I do have a bit of a concern about the height at, 1 meter addition allowed and 3.15 meters proposed. Again, I'm wrestling with that being minor, but I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Matthews. Member Ferguson, please.
There are two issues here. The first of which is, as Member Matthews referred to, is the building height. Now, I'm sure that Member Cadeau can back me up on this, but being familiar with Go Home Lake, the general topography of the lake shows a relatively small area at the lake and then some very steep inclines. And so in this case, because of the steepness of the incline, in order to avoid blasting, he's looking for, the maximum's 20, he's looking for 28 feet. So he's looking for 8 feet overage. And I think that because of that incline and he wants to avoid blasting, it's a legitimate request. Number two is this as of right provision in the zoning bylaw that does allow GFA for a non-complying dwelling to increase to 95 square meters or 10,023 square feet. So for what they're asking for then is an increase of 26 square feet above and beyond the permitted 95 meters. And again, so the total cottage is going to be 1,049 square feet, which in this day and age is far from what we're seeing going up. Cottages are generally much, much larger. So I think that really the requests are reasonable and I support this application.
Thank you, Member Ferguson. Member Kuchar, please.
Thank you. I will admit, I did find the report a little bit confusing with regards to the size, square footage, square meters increase and the two different restrictions. But if these folks were allowed to go to 95 square meters and are going to 97 square meters, I don't consider the additional 2 square meters as being that significant. And with an end result that is less than 100 square meters or barely over 1,000 square feet, whatever you prefer system. Clearly, they're not going for a mansion here. They're going for a modest cottage. I have no issue with that. The height, it is a significant increase over what they have. But having said that, I also looked at the near neighbor who's partially up the hill, and this, I don't think when they finish building, they're going to be any higher than the neighbor. They're probably still, the roof line will still be lower than the neighbor. And so overall, I mean, and well below the tree line. And so fully appreciating the awkwardness of the building site, I can well understand this, I'll call it compromise. Yes, their cottage is too close to the water by current standards. I'm sure that's, but you know, I think asking them to tear it down and move everything well back into the woods is a bit of an extreme, and but as a matter of right, they don't have to do that. I thought the suggestion of the member of the public of maybe expanding what is now their guest cabin is a reasonable one, but I'm sure they considered that. So as much as I think the additional height at the back is a bit unfortunate and will be a little bit awkward to build upon, I think that this qualifies as minor.
Thank you, Member Kuchar. Member Jarvis, please.
I too was having difficulty with the as of right versus everything else. I got clarification, and it makes a lot more sense to me now to see that as of right, they are allowed 95 square meters. They're requesting 97, so I do 97.4. So in answer to Member Matthews' comments, that to me qualifies as a minor variance in that respect. I too had an issue with the height, and I am curious from a technical standpoint. I know height. I'm curious to know how the height, I see the drawings how it's measured, but why is the measurement from where it is in the drawings that have been submitted here versus where the actual peak of the roof is versus the land immediately below it, which I think would probably be less than the 3.15 meters. Does that comment make sense, Brad? Can you help me on that?
Yeah, so are you referring to where they're measuring the height from to the midpoint?
Yeah, in the case of the addition,
yep.
Are you measuring the height from where the cottage, the original cottage, the base of the original cottage to the new peak, or are you measuring from the ground immediately below the new peak?
So the provision in the zoning bylaw would permit the increase from the existing height of the building. So it would go from the midpoint of the existing dwelling to the midpoint of the proposed addition.
Interesting. My thinking right now is that if you were to take a height reading from the ground immediately below the new peak, you'd probably be less than the 3.1 meters, 15 meters. But that's neither here nor there. It does beg another question for future consideration, Brad. In the future, if the current owners or new owners decide to put another addition on, I mean, there are a lot of other implications here. But where would any new height calculation be? Where would that start from?
So through the chair to Member Jarvis, the new height would be measured from, so we would take the definition of building height in the zoning bylaw and then measure it to that. So in that case, the height would then be measured from the midpoint of the addition.
Interesting.
However, they would still be limited by the gross floor area expansion.
I know there are lots of other implications. Yeah, I know.
Correct.
Thank you, Brad. I appreciate that explanation.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I too from the standpoint, I'll mirror Councillor, or rather Mayor Coutsier's comments, or Member Coutsier for the purposes of this meeting, that there is this issue with the cottage being so close to the water, but based on the bylaws as we have them set out, I can't see having much opposition to this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Jarvis. Member Caddo.
Me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, sorry. Yeah, any questions I had were asked by the fellow members, and I don't have a problem with this. Like I say, the explanation of the size and that was a little confusing, but now it's Brad explained a little better, a little clearer for us.
Thank you, Member Caddo. Member Demke.
Yes, I'm with Colin on most of the questions have been answered. But one of my concerns was where the heck would they put the septic? But Mr. Dupuy talked about coming up with an alternative, I guess, that that will work if the township is okay with that. The tree canopy question seemed on my mind, but when I looked at some of the pictures, you have to go up a heck of a lot more to top the tree canopy that's behind it. So I really don't have any issue with that. I questioned sort of I'm still confused in my mind about the difference between why a percentage is there and then why the gross floor area, the 97.4 is allowed. So given the answers that I've heard, the two square meters isn't a big deal. And I think everyone else has answered the questions that satisfy my questions on supporting this. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Demke. I just have one question for either the applicant or their agent. In the drawings, the elevation drawings that Brad presented earlier, we show that addition, perched on a fairly precarious angle against the stone in the back. And, one of the main concerns here has been the overall height. I'm just wondering if you had explored some of the various avenues that are available for removing some of that rock that's behind the cottage and thereby lowering the roof line. As you probably know, blasting is not the only alternative when it comes to moving that rock. There are other ways of doing that, and I'm just wondering if you've explored any of those. So go ahead, Mr. Dupuy.
Okay, thank you. The quick answer is yes. This is probably version, 18, 19, 20 of the plan. Very first endeavor was to reduce the width going backwards so that we could sneak into the gap, if you will, between the existing cottage and the rock and keep it nice and low. But at that point, we were adding like 3, 4, 5 feet to the cottage, which is really adding no value whatsoever to a new room. And then the next step was to go sideways with it over to the left if you're standing at the water looking at it. But as soon as we did that, we were consuming all of the good dock space that was dock or deck space available over on that side. The next iteration was to stack it right over top of the existing cottage, and that was even worse. It made it even taller than what we have right now. So this is kind of the best solution, or the hybrid that we came up with. And to go towards your point, have we thought of other methods of removing rock? Yes, we have. This is based on a quick contractor survey of the rock, as in, draw a string and give me some elevations every 2 feet along the way. So this is a good generalized surface for the rock. Is there an opportunity to use, I can't remember the name of the product, but basically I think it's Bright. You drill a hole, you put it in, and it will expand and snap a piece of rock without blowing the smithereens out of it. You could do that in selected pockets, and if site conditions permit, we would do that. Take the beam that supports the house, actually build it into the floor system, so make a flush beam. That's as compact as you can make the floor system, and take that floor system and sit it on the lowest possible footing that we can get onto a somewhat relative area on that rock. So if we can get, I'm going to say 4 or 5 pockets where we can remove some rock, make it fairly flat, drill some pins in, pour a footing just to give you a flat surface. And it would be no bigger than, 12, 14 inches in diameter. So we don't need a lot of area to do it. And as long as we're not having to go in there and remove like volumes of rock, we don't want to be in there taking out 4, 5, 6 cubic yards of rock. That's going to defeat the purpose of trying to keep this easy. But yeah, we can definitely do that. And if there's an opportunity to use the Bright product to knock off the bumps or the tops and drop the whole thing a couple of feet, yeah, I believe that is the intent when we get into actual construction, to allow the site conditions with a little help to keep this thing nice and low.
Okay, we have a comment from Victoria Lemieux.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to chime in just because I was part of the pre-consultation with the applicant's agent on this file, and I did want to just chime into committee that, we did run through a bunch of the options that Mr. Dupuy was talking about, and upon, suggestion from staff, from myself, that obviously the preference is not to try and shake up that rock and potentially remove it and try and keep the stability of the shoreline as best as possible. So that's why we did, or myself, I did suggest for them to apply as is, to ask for that optimal top height. As he mentioned, if they can, try and wiggle it down, that's great. This is almost a worst case scenario type of situation, but they were advised by staff to try and not do any rock removal based on our site alteration bylaw. So just wanted to chime that in, that was also a recommendation of staff during the pre-con process. Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria. And just to further that question a little bit, you were saying, would that require a site alteration permit if the applicant was to, explore further removing some of that rock?
Mr. Chair, they would be able to remove up to 4 cubic meters under the site alteration bylaw without a permit. If they wanted to remove more, they would have to go to council for approval. But again, that's something that we tried to push the applicants away from, because I don't think in this case it's necessary, and the height that they're requesting is minor in nature given what they're adding. So hopefully it doesn't get to that point, because again, staff would prefer that they don't, alter the potential structure and stability of that rock.
Okay, thank you very much. If there are no further questions or comments, I will read the resolution. Be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Committee of Adjustment approves the minor variance application A20-16 to zoning bylaw 2014-75 for 7148 Go Home Lake Shore to permit the construction of addition onto an existing legal non-complying dwelling with an increase of gross floor area of 73.0%, where 25.0% is permitted, and an increase in building height of 3.15 meters, where 1.0 meters is permitted, subject to the following: that municipal taxes be paid to date, that approval of this variance is granted and fixed to the subject site plan, extent, location, scale, and use contemplated in the application, that the owner provide details regarding the capacity of the existing septic system or obtained an issued building permit for a new septic system to the satisfaction of the Township Building Department, that the owner provide details regarding the existing deck structure on the subject lands to ensure compliance with the zoning bylaw to the satisfaction of the township, that a site plan control approval application be submitted and approved, and that a site plan agreement be executed and detailing the proposed development and vegetation protection areas in the manner prescribed by the applicable policies of the Township of Georgian Bay official plan as they relate to the administration of site plan control, and that approval of this variance expires 3 years from the date of decision if building permits have not been issued for the approved structure. All those in favor? Okay, the application is approved. Thank you very much. Okay.
Who has the rooster?
And I meant to put the thing outside before the meeting, but he got back in again. All right, thank you very much to the applicants. And Victoria, you can bring us back to the section, okay? Okay. We are now just us again. And we will I would expect at this point everyone has had an opportunity to read the minutes of our last meeting. And being so, could I have a motion, please, to accept the minutes of our previous Committee of Adjustment meeting? All those in favor? Moved by Member Kuchar, seconded by Member Demke. Thank you. And
Chair Hill, I would like to move them as amended.
okay, let's change that to approval of the minutes as amended. Thank you, Member Kuchar.
I trusted everybody received the correspondence from Ms. Emerald this morning in regard to the changes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And finally, a motion for adjournment.
Don't we have to vote on the motion to accept the minutes as amended?
Yes, I was just I was checking to see if you're paying attention. Thank you.
So far,
could I have a motion? All those in favor of approving the minutes? All right, so approved. Motion is carried. And now we need a motion for adjournment at 11:06 a.m. Moved by Member Demke, seconded by Member Caddo. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you, everyone. I think we made it through our first Zoom meeting without any serious impact. Thank you very much, Victoria, for the coaching and the training session and all of the things that made